We got Candace Owens on the right and Dr. Cornel West on the left. And we're going to quietly listen to them, but the second you hear a siren, we got to get the hell out of here. Shh! Hi guys, welcome to the show. Welcome to the pub.
How you doing, my brother?
I'm glad to have you back, Cornel. I'm glad we finally got you, Candace.
Thanks for having me.
Now, obviously, we have both of you here. You had that fight on Fox, both black, one right, one left. Obviously, the first question is going to be sex. Sex in 2019. Like, I rarely discuss this subject on the show, but I wanted to come sort of sideways with you guys on this. I couldn't imagine being a 20-year-old girl right now, or even a young man in college, with the culture we have today of Me Too and feminism, and I'm at the point now where I think it might be killing romance. Because with all this constant need for uber consent, how do you court a lady anymore? Like if you were a 20-year-old man.
Well, I'd have to really use my imagination, brother. That was a long time ago, I can tell you that. No, but there's two things. One is you got the art of intimacy, which we're losing. So that the notion of being vulnerable, the notion of surrendering as opposed to just resigning or dominating, that's being lost, you see. My generation, it was oldest read and try a little tenderness.
Right.
These days, it's more say my name, say my name, say my name. It's a very different orientation and disposition, you see. But on the other hand, you've got all of the policing that takes place. And so it's hard for people to really allow themselves to be themselves. And you can't really have a serious relationship if it's just posing, posturing, wearing a mask.
Yeah. Well, you were in D.C. You just met a man, happily married. I met a million Trump girls in D.C. I used to do a show there. And they were all having a lot of trouble finding a dude. And you thought, if this was 50 years ago, you wouldn't have women's political beliefs affecting their love lives.
Right. I mean, I think first and foremost, what we're seeing now is into, I call it toxic feminists, but it's not that at all, and it is scary for men to want to date. And the irony is that these toxic feminists, or modern feminists, whatever you want to call them, third wave feminists, are creating men that they don't want to date. They don't want men to act like they have their tails in between their legs. That's actually, there's something that is very unnatural about that, seeing men like that. But we have a culture and society that's sort of promoting it. I mean, I'm staunchly against it, and I think, you know, the Me Too movement is something that I spoke out against instantly. The concept of just convicting men, absent any details, seeing things trend like #BelieveWomen. I mean, these are the sorts of things, and I'm correlating this to they can make me think of DC and the Christine Blasey Ford stuff, like just believe women. That's a scary thing. I mean, that's literally how black men got lynched.
Right, yeah.
That's literally what happened to, you know, I mean, they got lynched. Just believe the women, this was the allegation, and go out after them. So I will never promote that sort of an ideology. There should always be facts. And that's something that we're seeing sort of disappear today.
But you would agree, of course, that there ought to be mutual respect.
Of course.
There ought to be accountability. And there ought to be reciprocity in that regard. Oh, no, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. There should be accountability.
Absolutely.
It's just, the left is primarily responsible for this. They start out with a concept that sounds good, like rape is bad, let's stop sexual assault. You go, I agree with that. And then they keep pushing that until they've kind of killed it for both sexes. Until, like, I heard about this thing where you have this consent app and you both list what's going to happen sexually together. And then you both sign it.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
And you're like, that's what prostitutes do.
You heard of that before?
I have heard about that, and the crazy part about that app is that even after they have sex, the woman is allowed to revoke consent. So she could have consented.
Oh, really?
And then you can wake up in the morning and decide that you no longer consent. And this is what I'm talking about. It's really scary stuff. And what I always try to tell women when I speak to them is I try to remind them that men are not dropped off by the stork. Like, they're our sons, so we're creating a society that our sons can't thrive in, that our fathers can't thrive in, that our brothers can't thrive in. So I always use my platform to speak out against it.
Well, this trick of using the nice verbiage to make the things sound justified, you see this with Antifa, where they say we're anti-fascist. What, you're against us? All right, you're pro-fascist. Or even with Black Lives Matter, you go, well, I don't think cops are racist. I didn't say that, I said Black Lives Matter. Are you against Black Lives Matter? Well, then you're against Black lives. You're saying they don't matter. Even pro-life and pro-choice play that game. Yeah, you end up being anti-life and anti-choice. And it's rhetoric that's used to trick you.
Well, part of it is, you know, we live in a culture where these categories and labels tend to reduce each and every one of us to just one particular small aspect of who we are as human beings. And so the richness of who we are and the contradictions that we all are, the incongruities that we all are, you see. All of us are shot through with all kind of incoherencies. That's what it is to be human. But you get one label, reduce just one particular aspect, and then you can use that as a weapon to go at folk, you see. And so, you know, the examples that you give, the Me Too movement, it can be reducible in such a way that you end up overlooking the complexity of relationships, but you want respect, accountability, and answerability. Antifa, there's nothing wrong with being anti-fascist. Fascism is an evil, right? We know it's an evil. We all ought to be anti-fascist in a fundamental way.
I think we all are.
Well, no, you got fascists in the world now.
Who? Oh, in the world, in America. Give me an American fascist.
Oh my God, you got neo-Nazi parties of fascists.
But what percentage of the American
no, it's a small, very, very small, but I mean, there's such a thing as fascists in America.
Sure.
And then you got a spectrum, because I mean, there's a spiritual fascism inside of all of us, in terms of what Augustine called the libido dominante, which is the lust for domination. And as a Christian, I could see it inside of myself. I can see it inside of every human being. Sin, a gangster proclivity resides inside of us. That is a kind of spiritual fascism. But political, economic fascism, institutional forms, we don't have a fascist party, but we got people who have deep fascist sensibilities. I'm going at Brother Trump on this in terms of when you actually attempt to engage in forms that are swerving outside of the law or suspending the law or demonizing vulnerable people, those are quasi-fascist sensibilities. But fascism as a whole ideology, we don't have a wholesale fascist ideological movement, but we've got some elements of it. The Klan had deep fascist sensibility. Would you agree with the Klan was deeply fascist?
Absolutely, and we have to remind ourselves that the Klan, they were Democrats, and I was actually going to make the argument that I see the Democrats actually they have a lot of fascist tendencies. And just in talking about the fact that I cannot go to a college campus and speak about the fact that I'm a black conservative and talk about why I believe in conservatism for black Americans, why I love Dr. Thomas Sowell, why I believe that the economics, a wonderful man.
I think he's wrong on a lot of things, but he's a brilliant man. Go right ahead.
I think he's right, but and you can think that, and we can both sit here and we can have this conversation and have an argument, and we do that.
Absolutely.
But the fact that he can go to a college campus and show up and he won't be met with Antifa protesters, right? And people trying to shut down his speech and threaten the event, and the university demanding that you pay for an absurd police presence that no one could really afford to put together. That's how you censor me. That's how you shut me down. So to me, that's institutionalized fascism that we see every day on the left. You will never see that on the right. You'll never see any place that you go as conservative. You will be welcomed. We might say, hey, I disagree with him, but I want to hear his ideas. So I think this dialogue, I think it's important so that people can determine who they actually think is right. If we don't talk, they're not getting a fair determination.
And I resent that isn't accepted as a truth. I mean, the understanding from a lot of, maybe half the country now, is that there's places that Cornel West would go to do a talk, and there'd be Nazis outside Sieg Heiling trying to prevent him, and that's just
absolutely
not true. Those
12
guys are not touring the country trying to stop liberal talks.
But I think one of the reasons is that you don't have a strong right-wing Nazi or right-wing fascist presence inside of the university. The university is very much a place where liberalism is hegemonic. And when you violate certain sensibilities of a variety of different liberals, then they can be intolerant. What you're calling fascist is intolerant. Going against that grain focuses much more on you. Now, you and I share a deep indictment of liberalism and neoliberalism. You do it from the right, mine is from the left. but because my understanding of the severe limitations of liberalism does incorporate certain elements of it, and you don't have strong Nazi presence in the university. You hardly have strong conservative presence in the university.
You don't have a strong Nazi presence
are much more
anywhere.
liberal than they are conservative. No, you do. You got it in Idaho,
in a shooting range in Alabama.
Utah. You got some places in the country that have some white supremacist militia and KKK, and you agree the KKK is fascist, right?
Well, I agree with him that I just don't know where it is in this country. So I've been able to travel to 47 countries over the past, 47 states over the past year, and I've not encountered or seen any pockets where I've seen Ku Klux Klan members. Do I believe that racism still exists? Of course, racism still exists. By the way, it's always going to exist. There's always going to be black people that hate white people. There's going to be white people that hate black people. But the question of whether this is some organized cell in our country that has a lot of power, I strongly disagree with that.
Well, I wouldn't say it has a lot of power. I would say it has some presence. I mean, they have empirical investigations, though, my dear sister, where you've got over 600 and some white supremacist militia groups, some of whom have death threats. And the FBI keeps track of them because the FBI infiltrates them.
Where are they?
You see? I don't know where they are because I don't
problem. See,
them down.
that should tell you that they're not a presence because we're two black Americans, and we're two black Americans. We should.
I mean, the FBI is not going to be lying. I'm not a fan of the FBI.
Well, I'm not saying I'm not a fan of them either. But I'm saying is that if this was something that was so obvious. Two black Americans sitting here, I'd be like, I'll tell you exactly where they are because I walk down the street over here. They're in Virginia, in this city, in this town. They meet here on Sundays. Every black American that I ask that says there's a Nazi or a KKK presence, you just go, where? They go, I don't know, I read it somewhere. And I think that's unacceptable.
Well, they often cite this SPLC hate map that looks
the
like
SPLC
post
hate
offices.
Group. I'm on the SPLC list.
No, SPL, tell me what the SPLC is now.
The Southern Poverty Law Center has these hate maps.
They're a hate group.
And you look at it, and it honestly looks like
like
post offices. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
No,
and
but
you go,
they try to, but same as true, the Anti-Defamation League will tell you that there are hate groups against black folk, against Jews, against Muslims, against a variety of different folk, and they've got some data.
But they don't.
They're also not considered a credible source.
They're not because they're funded. No, they're not. They're funded leftists. They're funded leftist.
Oh no, anti-defamation is not leftist. Now they're coming at me tooth and nail.
I sat in Congress with them, and I'm telling you right now,
they're not leftist.
If you saw my recent thing in Congress, I was sitting with all of these professors and all of these people that were, and they had no numbers, and they said, well, we don't know the numbers, but we do know that it's happening. So to me, that seems like a means to control black Americans. This is what I talk about. If this was such a big issue that we had to be worried about it, we wouldn't need an FBI report to tell us. No one needed. My grandpa growing up in the South with the real KKK, he wasn't waiting on an FBI report to tell him that the KKK was there. They were outside of his door, shooting bullets inside, and he was running to the back of his house. So this now we have people that are more fearful, and yet there's less evidence, except they keep saying that there are reports and there are groups that are telling them. That's what I think we have to step outside of. Fair?
But you got all these different attacks, though, sister, on folk, not just in churches, but people with death threats and so forth, and these folk who supposedly are keeping track on the sources of these threats say that they're not just falling from the sky. There's got to be some networks that are in place.
Well, they say that Candace and I are the networks. They say that Jordan Peterson, Dave Rubin are the networks.
I don't think nobody said Sister Candace is head of any kind of...
I'm on the SPLC list. They put some map on, and they said that I was radicalizing people on the internet. Is it such a radical idea to think that black Americans can do it without government handouts? Okay, then guilty as charged, because that's literally what I go around and I say on stage. I say black Americans can do it without government handouts. I am now... Across the board, they say that I'm radical and I'm poisoning people. They tried to blame me for inspiring a mass shooting in New Zealand, saying that this person got radicalized by my ideas of black conservatism in America. I mean, they play really horrible stuff, and fortunately for you, because you hail in liberal land, you are a liberal.
Well, I'm not liberal now. I'm a leftist.
You're a leftist.
I'm a leftist.
What's the difference?
I'm critical, yeah.
What's the difference in your liberal and
the difference is liberalism refuses to engage in a critique of capitalism, refuses to engage in a critique of empire and imperial policies, and it refuses to engage in the milquetoast character of the Democratic Party. Liberals are in the